Well, hello. How are you doing, Renee and Cassandra?
Well, good afternoon, Bill.
Hi.
Hi, it's so good that you're here with us today. I know that you have a very interesting story that you would like to tell us. So why don't you just pick it up from the beginning and start your story?
Okay, Bill. The story begins January 25th, 2012, in our daughter's high school gym at a basketball game. Basically, it was the last period of the basketball game, and she collapsed on the floor in the gym. Suddenly,
Okay, that your daughter collapsed on the gym. Was that school here in Colorado?
Yes, it was my middle school. I was in middle school at the time, seventh grade. From my point of view, as the person who had the heart attack, because that's what it had happened. That's why I
Wait a
collapsed.
minute. Wait a minute. You're a young lady, a child, pretty much, seventh grade, and you
Yes,
suffered a heart attack?
yes.
Did you have any warning or any knowledge of heart trouble or anything like that?
I do remember around the time of the event happening, I would always wear my coat inside. I do remember that. I was just like always cold, but there had not been any knowledge. My parents and my family didn't have any knowledge about anything like heart related at that point.
So you had this heart attack and you collapsed on the floor, and we're
Mhm.
going to pick it up from that collapse.
I had a collapse. I remember I wasn't in the game. I was on the bench and I looked at my coach and I like just passed out. I remember being on the floor, my eyes going, opening and closing. And then I remember my sister, my grandma, they were there as well, and they were like, you know, I remember my sister asking me, please wake up, things like that, but I didn't have any, because I was having a heart attack, so I wasn't like aware, you know,
You
of
were
anything.
semi-conscious, like.
Semi, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Semi-conscious, and my mom, from the perspective of the people that were around me, told me about, it was just so quiet, like the gym was quiet, like no, you could hear a pin drop in the gym.
and so what happened while she was on the floor, the gym staff went and got the AED, which is something that you use for people when they're having heart issues, especially at a gym, any type of student, staff, etc. And that would be used to help that heart basically be stable until you get to the hospital. So the gym staff got the AED and did not have to use it, but he had it handy. The ambulance had been called, and the ambulance came and got her and whisked her away to the emergency room. Um, I believe we ended up going to Rocky Mountain Children's Hospital downtown to the emergency room.
Mhm. And from my perspective on that, I do remember the only other thing I remember about that night was being in the ambulance, and like just waking up in the ambulance and being very kind of just like, what's going on, seeing people that I don't know all of a sudden.
Excuse me. Let me ask you this. Um, Renee, were you there?
Yes, I was there. My husband was there. My mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, Cassandra's cousin and sister. We were all at the game.
Wow. And all of this happened. Just real briefly, if you don't mind, Mother, when you saw this, what was going through your mind?
Well, through my mind was, well, maybe she hadn't eaten and she was hungry or dehydrated. That's what I'm thinking. Nothing major. Young people not eating enough, doing homework, just run, run, run. So, nothing serious. She just passed out from exhaustion.
Well, when did you become aware when the ambulance got there? When did both of you all become aware that this was a heart issue?
Well, once we got to the emergency room, particularly when they're suspecting some type of respiratory issue, they do a blood draw. So they do a blood draw and they get a stat reading, and the heart has an enzyme called troponin. So when someone has a heart attack, the levels of that troponin enzyme goes up, and hers was way off the chart. Blood test was done, and they determined that she'd had a heart attack because that troponin level was off the charts. They decided at that point to get her into the ICU. So once they got her into the ICU, she was stable for a little bit, and then her vitals started changing, going down, dropping, all of a sudden. So the doctor said to us, we've got to get her on life support now. Her life is in danger.
Wow.
Yes, we were in shock too. Trust me, Bill, shock. Because she just was playing basketball. She fell on the ground, and now we're having to put our daughter on life support in a matter of 2 hours. So the life support, my husband and I gave permission. She was put on life support immediately, and that stabilized her.
So your baby falling on the floor to maybe hadn't eaten enough is now on life support.
Life support within 2 hours.
Like hooked up life support.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were saying, Bill. Wow. It was unbelievable. It was just totally a healthy 12-year-old from a basketball game to life support.
That sounds very frightening, Renee.
Extremely frightening.
Your baby on life support.
Right.
And you really at this time don't know everything of what's going on.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's pick it on up from there then.
So she was on life support, and I can tell you for myself, I actually became speechless. The doctor was talking to me, and I couldn't even get words out of my mouth. I was in shock. My husband had to be held up by a couple of his nephews because he was falling down to his knees. I mean, we really couldn't believe what was going on. So she was on that life support. Let's see, late January until literally about the middle of March.
What?
Yes, Bill. She was on the life support. God was all up in this story. Let me tell you, Bill.
We know God was up in there, but wait, I just got to back up. Let me kind of push. My eye got something in it, but I mean, because I'm a parent, to see, your baby was on life support from January till March.
Yes, Bill. Around the 13th or 14th to be exact. So from January 25th till March 13th or 14th, she was on life support.
At this time, were they aware of what the problem was?
So basically, what happened, Bill, they ran a series of tests. Initially, and we had wonderful doctors. So this doctor's name was Dr. Max Mitchell. He is a cardiothoracic surgeon at Children's Hospital. So he operates on the heart and the lungs. Very humble, God-fearing doctor that we had. So he did what you call exploratory heart surgery first. And that was to go in there and find out what is the problem. And that involved putting some dye in her body to check the channels in her heart. And yes, he did discover the issue. And it was on the left side of her coronary artery. So basically, he said there was a blockage there. And that blockage interrupted the heart flow, and that's what caused the heart attack. So she had the exploratory surgery. That was successful. Shortly after she had the exploratory surgery, it was a few days later, one of her lungs collapsed, Bill.
What? Okay. You're going too fast. I mean, wait a minute. So we turn around, we have the heart attack, exploratory surgery. She's just getting
Right.
off the life support. And now you're saying, right after that, we have a lung that collapsed.
Right. She was still on life support when this lung collapsed, Bill.
Oh.
The lung tissue died. So then that tissue had to be removed out of her body so she wouldn't have any other additional medical complications. It had to be taken out immediately. She was spiking fevers. They had to take bags of ice and put it on her body to keep her fever down.
When you say dead tissues from the lung, they didn't take the lung, they just something dead on the lung they had to remove?
No, it was the actual lung. So on one side of your body, you have 3 lobes. So basically 3 compartments. On the other side of your body, you have 2 compartments. So on her right side, the middle compartment, the tissue died. So they had to remove the right middle lobe of her lung tissue. And that left the top and the bottom. And I remember asking, so what happens if you remove lung tissue? How does your body, compensate for that? And God has made our body so marvelous that when you remove a compartment of the lung, the top and the bottom connect and you end up with a complete lung again.
Amen.
Amen.
So that's what
Amen.
happened.
God,
Yes.
God created us remarkably, hasn't he?
Yes, he did.
I mean, remarkably. It's almost like talking to a heart and lung specialist talking to you.
Oh, well, thank you. After we saw what we saw, Bill, I'm telling you, I mean, it was just one thing right after another.
Oh, so
So,
there's more?
oh, yes.
Okay, well, okay. I done got over that first shock. I'm at the lung collapse. The lung,
Right,
the tissue has now been removed. She is
right.
still on life support.
Correct.
Okay, let's pick it up from there. Introducing New Me, a very new product for your skin. And oh, for the inside? Oh, yes, we have something there for you as well. Together, it is a health choice that I'm sure you will enjoy. Check it out. New Me.
All right. So, lungs been removed. And mind you now, her doctor, Dr. Mitchell, bless his heart, stayed at the hospital through the night. That's how critical she was. He didn't even go home. He stayed like in the room, very close to where Cassandra was.
Amen.
That's how critical it was. So the lung surgery, and he performed the heart surgery, and he also did the lung surgery. So then there's recovery from the lung surgery. And in the meantime, they're having to move the bed, turn her body. So she didn't get pneumonia. They had to make sure, that they kept the tissues moving so she wouldn't get pneumonia just laying still on her back. Now that's on top of everything else. So lung surgery was good. She's still on life support. And there is a machine called an ECMO, ECMO. And I can't remember the exact, what each letter stands for, but basically it's life support. When your lungs or your heart are not functioning for your body, this ECMO machine sustains your life. So she was on this ECMO, and it requires nurses 24/7, literally sitting there watching the flow of fluids in your body. And they have to make sure there's no air pockets, nothing's getting jammed. It's a 24/7 watch period.
Oh my Lanta.
Yes.
Cassandra, you hear? Oh, I know you done heard this before, but it's like God had his hands all over this.
Yes, just listening to it because it's been 10 years, almost 11 years since all of this. I remember, asking questions to, my parents about like, what happened because I was on life support for a large part of while all this was going on. And so I remember, some of what my mom is saying now, like, but even just hearing it now, it's like, whoa, like all of that happened, like it's just kind of like, whoa, you know?
Yeah, I it's like whoa, and I
Yeah.
wasn't even there, and it was 10 years ago, and I'm still like whoa, you know. But when you
Mm-hmm.
came off of life support,
Mm-hmm.
what could you tell me like your physical state, your mental state, like how did you feel? Were you in pain? Could you breathe? Happy?
When I got off of, or when I woke up, I remember my eyes open. It was kind of like this blurriness. I don't remember being in pain. I don't think that I was in pain. I think that the part of the pain was emotional that I felt. I had something going on, and the nurse or doctor, I think it was a nurse, had to do like a procedure on my groin, which is like on your quad kind of area. And I remember they literally had like tweezers and like all of this. And, they're like, doing the procedure, and my parents are there, and they're looking, making sure everything's good, trying to calm me down. And I couldn't see anything. They had, I couldn't see, but I was just like, it was painful. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, and I had never had any of this, prior to being sick or being in the hospital. My sister, who we're 18 months apart, so we're like pretty close. And I remember my mom had told me that she couldn't come to visit me while I was there because of what it was like.
There's a policy in the hospital.
Yeah, a policy in the hospital, because I was in the ICU. Other people, when you're in the ICU, you're really sick. So they don't want any, like germs and everything, all of that. My mom or my dad telling me that they were going to do, see if they could get my sister to come. And so I remember her coming, and also because I was on life support for so long, I really, my voice was very, very low, and I really couldn't, like, you really couldn't hear me. I really couldn't talk, I remember my sister actually being able to come, and it was like during the day, I remember, because I remember the sun was out, and she came, and I like turned, and I just like, I think I started crying, and I started like, kind of yelling, but in a quiet voice, because and so I was just so excited. I realized that, that I had a life outside of being in the hospital, I had family, and I had, other people around me that,
That
as a
love you.
person that I love.
You have
Exactly.
people around you that love you. And when
Yes.
you woke up, did you have any sense of time? Was it like you just woke up and it was yesterday, or when you woke up and they told you how much time went by?
When I woke up, I don't remember having any recollection of time because I was just so confused because I was asleep for so long. I was just like, what is this? And I remember there was a TV in the room, and I remember my dad, because he watches the news a lot, and so he had the news on, and it was Whitney Houston had died at that point. And I
Okay.
remember I looked, and I'm like, Whitney Houston died. And
Right.
I'm like, and so I think I asked my dad, because he was in the room with me. I think I was like, Whitney Houston died? Like, what's happening? Like, what's going on in the world? Like, what?
Right. You missed
You
something.
know, I'm exactly trying to understand what was going on was really kind of how I was feeling. And then, the doctors and everything, or every morning they would come, or they would have like what they called like rounds.
Yep.
So basically, like, it's like a shift change. I remember they would be outside of the door, the hospital room door, and they would be talking, and they're looking at me, and I'm sitting on the bed, and I'm just like, I wonder what they're talking about. Like, I wonder what they're saying about me. Like, I don't know.
Were there any more complications?
You want to speak to that?
So yes, Bill, what Cassandra is describing is they would basically go to each patient's room, and that would be the doctor, the care team, and they would do updates. Had there been any changes through the night? How's the patient doing? Are they stable? Do we need to make any changes? And they did that every morning, usually around 6 a.m. So, and they would just go to every person's room. So that's some of what Cassandra was seeing. And they kept her sedated because she had tubes from head to toe. And just imagine a 12-year-old, in a hospital room, tubes in both arms, you've got a tube in your throat, you've got things in your feet, and you're laying there flat on your back looking at the ceiling or a TV in the room. So that was her experience for 3 months straight.
Mm.
And then you've got the nurses just kind of coming in and out of the room, just checking lines, making sure she's stable. And she couldn't eat. So she had liquid nutrition. And she was on heart meds because she had 71% damage to her heart muscle. So she had 29% function for 3 months.
Okay. Ooh. All I can do is just, okay, the lung after the heart attack, then we come out, you're awake, and now you're finding out that you only have 29% of heart function.
That is correct. Now, she had a heart MRI done, and I sat in the room with her, to keep her comforted while she was having the procedure done. And they basically put dye in her body so they could test the function of her heart. So after that MRI was done, the doc met with us and said she has 29% function. And at that point, it was determined that she needed a heart transplant.
Oh my Atlanta. Go ahead. I don't.
And so Dr. Mitchell took my husband and I, and at that time, my sister is a retired nurse, but she was an active RN at the time. She worked at the VA.
Okay.
So she was up there with us explaining and breaking medical terms down so we could understand, those long medical terms. And basically, Dr. Mitchell, who was her main surgeon, took us into a conference room and he did his drawings on a board and said, this is what's taking place. And he said that if she doesn't have the transplant, she will be a cardiac cripple. No quality of life, no energy, no nothing, because her heart was only functioning at 29%.
So at 29%, the doctors are saying, and I guess this is a rule of thumb for everyone and anyone listening, when you're at 29%, you can't hardly go to the bathroom.
You can't get up and walk 1 foot without being losing your breath. That's 29%. And she literally was turning purple. Literally. She was losing color in her face, very weak, because she wasn't moving. And typically when you're in a hospital for a long period of time not moving, a process called atrophy takes place. And basically the brain tells the body, okay, you're not moving, so it's time to start shutting things down because you're not exercising, nothing's moving. So it has to go into like reserve mode. And that's essentially what happens, especially when it's your heart muscle, your main pump.
Listening to you, I can tell, Renee, you was in everything them doctors was doing with your baby.
You best believe I was.
You know everything. You know the names, and every step of the way. It's like talking to the doctor. Okay, here's what happened next, and here's what's going on now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, as you can imagine, being a parent, you feel totally helpless. There's absolutely nothing you can do. You're looking at your child. Tubes from head to toe. You can't just pick them up and walk out of the hospital room. You got these nurses watching them 24/7, and there's nothing you can do. So you got to know everything that's going on.
I hear you, Renee. So we're at 29%.
Yes,
And then
sir.
they tell you she's going to need a new heart.
Yes. And my husband and I looked at each other and said, how do we tell her this? What do we say? You know, you collapsed, you're doing just fine, and you go from that to now you need a heart. How do you explain that to your 12-year-old child? Yes, that's what we were doing, Bill, shaking our head, speechless.
I'm sorry, I just got a little speechless there. I mean, it's like all I can do is ask the question. So what did you do? Well, another episode of Where Were You? And we would like to thank our guests for this evening. Also want to thank New Me. New Me helps sponsor Where Were You? So go on and check it out. New Me /Arkway. Also, go on and hit that like. Go on and hit subscribe. Go on and hit that share. Go on and leave a comment. And if you find anyone that has a story, let me know. And hey, you bless someone today.